welcome back to Archetypical. Today we've got a great panel discussion between Snowflake, Alation, and Archetype. We've got some great panelists here. We have Gene from Alation, we have Brandon from Archetype, and we have Jack from Snowflake. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to jump into the conversation. I know the topic today is going to be around cybersecurity and data governance and how all that is brought together, how we use that, how we see our clients using that information and using the tools, the great tools that you guys have, and how Archetype brings that together. We'll go ahead and dive in with some questions.
Cool.
So, right off, can we each provide a little bit of an overview of each of our organizations? Brandon, all of you go first.
Sure. As you clearly know, Archetype is an analytics and professional services firm. We help our clients deal with data. Data is messy. It's hard to deal with. And we want to unlock business value from that and help our clients develop their own capabilities to do that. And so that's a big focus for us.
Excellent. Jack.
Sure. So at Snowflake, our mission is to mobilize the world's data, right? We do that through what we call the data cloud, which is a combination of both the Snowflake platform, right, and the content that you could find on our marketplace, such as data sets, apps, services, etc. And we provide the data cloud to help companies conduct, data engineering, data warehousing, all these different types of workloads that top data-driven organizations typically do, essentially.
Great.
Cool.
Gene.
Sure. So Alation focuses primarily around data governance and search and discovery. So we kind of like the joke, but basically it's, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but the Yelp for your data. But basically, think of it as just that, a method of finding that sweet information that you're looking for with all that data that you have in an organization. How do you know what you really have? And when you have it, how do you know how to properly use it? That's really where Alation kind of comes in and helps our customers the most.
Yeah, that data discovery piece is important.
Very much.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, everybody. And why we're all here today is to talk about how our groups work together, right? How these tools complement one another, how the integration works with us. I'd like to talk a little bit about, each of the tools and how they actually work.
So in particular to cybersecurity, correct? Yep. So Snowflake, when it comes to the cybersecurity piece, essentially we like to consider ourselves as a partner within the cybersecurity space, right? Because the main thing that we do is we provide that single layer of storage, right? In cybersecurity, the term is thrown around, hot, warm, and cold storage, right? The essential piece of Snowflake is to make all of your data hot, right? It's all at your fingertips. It's in that single space that you can query. And that's our goal, right? And typically we do this within what we call the connected app model, right? We have a certain application or a SIM or an XDR sitting on top of that security data lake. And essentially we work with those partners to help you conduct things like threat detection, incident response, and whatnot. But I can't emphasize enough, we're just that single layer of storage, right? We don't do a lot of the cybersecurity. We rely on our partners for a lot of that.
Absolutely.
So that's how we play in the cybersecurity space.
Very important piece of it.
Yeah. I have to agree with you. We're also a partner in this game as well, right? So Alation, we work with the metadata, right? So I'm not really ingesting the data that we look at Snowflake, but we're cataloging it. And we're bringing that to the surface so that you can better understand how to secure it and how to work with it, right? So if you think of it that way, Alation is really designed to help users find the information, and then once it's found, understand how to properly use it, right? What policies to enforce and things like that. So again, we're not the security engine, but we're certainly helping users understand either what to secure, or when we've secured it, how to properly use it now that we know what kind of data that is. Think of PII and things like that.
Yeah,
how to properly
what
work with
constraints and what compliance
exactly.
items.
So that's where Alation's play comes in. So again, a partner in this whole party over here to work together.
Yeah, that's excellent. Brandon, how does Archetype bring this all together?
So we are looking at this from just the bigger picture of, companies have security data They may have it in SIMs. They may have it in observability tools. That they're typically doing something around cybersecurity. It's an important problem to solve. Companies are mandated to do it, right? So they clearly have things that they're doing in that space. What we see is that those tools that they're using, they don't talk to each other. So you end up with silos of cybersecurity data. They're not necessarily easy to search all the time. They're great at, pre-built detection algorithms, working with the MITRE attack framework, things like that. But when it comes to research, we talk to our clients and they say, hey, we spent 15 days researching the last issue that we had.
Yeah.
It would be great if all that data was in one place.
In one place, right.
And we could more easily search it, right? So our role is helping to work with our partners, work with our clients, understand how best we can help them leverage that data, bring it together, put it into Snowflake so you can enrich it, add data about their people, their locations, their assets that may link to those security events and help them tell a better story, as well as look at how do these things correlate together. Like we see these events happening and these events happening. Let's look at them together, right? So I think the opportunity is really big in that self-service research space. Once you have the data collecting into Snowflake, metadata management around that can go a long way as well. And then, the data science aspect of that, right? You've got all that data in one place. You can analyze it. Well, we can also build predictive models now because we have the data. We've integrated it. We've cleaned it up. So the predictive model space, and then even things that are traditional in the BI world, around key risk indicators and dashboards around that are trends that we see happening. So our role is to help our customers and clients understand that these things are possible and that while they have capabilities in their SIMs and other tools, there's an opportunity to do more with that and help make it easier to deal with cybersecurity data.
It's funny you said silo data because Alation helps with that a lot, and it's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
If an organization doesn't know what data they have, right? Like data's going to happen. You're going to do your job one way or the other. So data's going to happen. So it will. And if you didn't know the data existed, you get those data silos. And if you don't know that the data is there, then how are you going to secure it? So it's like a great point you said there around data silos, because that's a scary thing. You don't know how to secure what you don't know exists.
Right.
So that's again where Alation kind of helps bring it up to the surface, and people are less inclined to create data silos because we're looking at everything that they have access to, or at least they could request access to inside of Snowflake, and you're securing it, and I can see what we have. No need for me to go and make another data silo someplace else. And now we all know everything's properly secure. So data silos are kind of a scary thing. That
especially around the cybersecurity.
Oh yeah, how do you even have someone have a server underneath their desk or something like that? I mean, like I'm just thinking like the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
How do you lock that down? You didn't even know it existed. So I think the way we work together really helps, stop that data silo issue.
And putting that data together in those predictive analytics and predictive threat detection can be very powerful.
Yeah, I think it can, and with Snowflake. The things you can do in Snowflake with Snowpark and tools like Dataiku just that are in the ecosystem, it's easier than ever to deal with that data and to come up with predictive models. So I think the value proposition is great for doing that.
Yeah. Jack, what are some of the biggest cybersecurity challenges at Snowflake that you guys are seeing out in the market?
Well, not to sound repetitive, but data silos, right?
Again.
Definitely.
Okay.
And we solve that obviously by putting it all in one place. Other things is, a lot of people typically have a lot of different cybersecurity tools, right? Mm-hmm. And if you add that to the data silo problem, right? Okay, if one tool is connected to these two data sources, another tool is connected to that data source, there's been an incident, there's been a threat. I need to identify this threat, I need to react, I need to analyze the data, right? I need to use these tools to look at that data. How am I going to bring these two data sources together with these two different cybersecurity tools? It's a lot of work, right? And essentially that's how we solve that problem, is by hooking up all these different tools into that single tier of storage, right? That single security data lake. And that's just one of the problems that I'm seeing within the industry. What about you?
Well, how we work so nicely together. I was kind of hoping you were going to send it over to me because it's a great transition. Where are the policies cataloged on everything you just said, right? So now you have all these different security tools, but how does a user really even know how they work, right? So as an end user, I just need to know it's secure. Think of dynamic masking, right?
Yes,
Okay, why is it masked? What's underneath it, and what rights do I need to get to that data? So if you think of exactly what you just said, there's all these different security models. Even if we have to have different security models and tools and whatnot, they still need to be cataloged someplace so you at least understand. Think of an audit, right? So with Alation, you can literally say, show me all PII data and how you're securing it. I mean, I'm not, that's literally a button that we can do that. So how do we work together? I know, trust me, that's why I work for Alation. No? It's a great deal. And that's why it's just such a wonderful partnership, because we're helping the front end, the business user, understand the complexity, or maybe not have them have to understand the complexity, but at least make them aware of what's going on behind the scenes, so that everyone can kind of work together a lot better. So that's where we really come into play, is cataloging what's going on.
Simplify the complexity.
Yeah, really. It works. It really works quite well, actually.
Yeah, and if you come up with a great data set, hey, this is something that was really helpful, you can publish it and help people understand what it is. And
replicate it. Right? If we know how it's going to work with a particular data set, we can replicate that model with the next one that we bring in.
Yeah, definitely.
So now we have a successful model that we can reuse.
And that kind of brings up a good point around, we often hear clients talk about data and needing to move to the cloud and whatnot, but then they always talk about, well, what are we going to do about data governance, right? And how do they start off with data governance, keeping cybersecurity in mind?
Right. The first thing we always say when it comes to this question is, let's just take security out first.
Sure.
We have to connect to the data to even understand what you have, right? And that's going to be across the board. Your migration strategy. Well, what are you migrating? Okay, let's connect to it. Let's figure out what you have. It's something called QLI, query log ingestion. Let's take a look at the workloads, who's using them, the popularity of them. So then we get a foundation of what's going on, what's important to people. Why are we going to worry about securing? Don't get me wrong, you need to secure everything, but why are we going to secure the least popular table in a system that no one's using, right? We need to focus on the most used workloads. So what Alation is going to do now when it comes to data migration is understanding who's using what, how often, how popular it is, and then give that to you and say, did you know everyone's using this? Is it locked down? Is it secure? Are we masking it properly? You know that's PII?
Should
GDPR?
they be using it? Should they have access?
What's the retention policy on it to get rid of it? So that's where we kind of almost become like the manual on how this is all going to work, or maybe even the documentation on what you've implemented behind the scenes.
It's one of my favorite features of Alation is that you can read logs, you can look at what's happening in Snowflake and other tools and understand what's available without a lot of effort. I grew up with metadata management tools that were a lot of effort and had built ETL jobs behind the scenes to collect and manage that, and even then it was still heavily curated. And I think the fact that you can prep and generate a lot of that and make it visible for people is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I have to second that. I have a lot of my customers who reach out to me asking me like, okay, how can we have this overarching view over our Snowflake instance, right? Like who's using the account admin role, who's accessing PII data, et cetera. And I always divert them to the documentation and how to query, our logs, right? But if they had Alation, I mean, it would just simplify the complexity, right? So like instead of having to go into all those different views and figure out how to stitch the data together to get an idea of a certain thing, you would use Alation to basically catalog all of that and make it just look pretty.
I love having Snowflake and Alation in place when an auditor is coming.
Yeah.
That is just
It's almost like
That's the perfect place.
Oh, it's cool.
having someone audit your taxes and knowing you have every receipt.
So, yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
come
Well,
on, buddy.
Some
I
auditors,
got you right
They
here.
don't even believe it.
Yeah, like,
They
I got
don't
you right
even
here.
believe it
Yeah.
behind the scenes. So it's fantastic.
Where we have a big play now, because data sharing is so important to Snowflake, that's where, again, the whole cataloging, think of the queries that you're allowing the other organization to run via that sharing model. How do they work? Think of the data types, the fields, the elements, what is each property, terms, what does customer mean for your company compared to my company? Where's that documented? Right, so a lot of that comes into play when we start doing data sharing. And then again, we can understand what the security model needs to be. How are we going to encrypt this data? We're not just giving it to somebody, right? We have to make sure that there's some kind of rules in place.
That's
right?
interesting
To be
as you talk
documented.
about what queries are being ran on
Right.
what data.
Right,
Right?
how do you
those,
know?
Are those queries in compliance?
Right. Yeah,
It's interesting.
exactly.
Yeah. Wow. How do you guys think, like, with these tools and everybody migrating to the cloud, like, how this is going to make other customers and in general think about cybersecurity and think about these types of tools? It's going to enable a lot of different things for security operations centers and things like that. Brandon.
Yeah, I see it as a big driver for why we're talking about cybersecurity workloads in Snowflake and why the security data lake is a great concept, because as people have moved to the cloud, as organizations have moved to the cloud, the data to ingest is a lot more structured. It's just easier to deal with, and there's more of it.
There's more of it.
You
Yeah.
don't have
A lot
to.
of it.
Yeah.
You don't have
Just a
to.
lot.
You don't have to work as hard to get it either,
True.
right? I mean, it's not the machine data that you're ingesting off of servers, right? It's you're subscribing to it, or you're querying APIs and things like that to get that information. So it's just a lot easier. Snowflake handles semi-structured and even now unstructured data really well. So it is something that's aligned with the capabilities of the tool sets, and it's unlocked the ability for us to do really great in advanced analytics and things like that with cybersecurity data.
Excellent. Excellent.
We also see a couple of our customers utilizing our Snowflake features like search optimization, right? Like point lookup queries. It's very relevant to certain cybersecurity cases when they want to identify a certain actor or user or a certain data point or anything that's really just a single point. They end up utilizing certain features such as search optimization to kind of make those use cases a lot faster, right? Typically, when you wanted to run that against your entire data set, tens of terabytes and whatnot, it takes quite some time to run. But with things like search optimization, it usually speeds it up.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I also just think that with these tools, people can start to feel a lot more confident. I mean, I'm thinking about my old days when I just first got into the help desk, Novell, right? And it was installed on floppy disks. But we had to put patches on things, on servers in a room that had an air conditioner come. Like, I don't want that responsibility.
Is that server patch?
Is it server? I don't know. Did you bring the floppy disk in? I thought it was your
Right,
job.
yeah.
So if you think of that, I don't want to deal with any of that. That's all done. All I need to know now is where's the control panel? How do I set it up? How do I train the models to understand what has to happen? I don't have to worry about, just put it up in the cloud. It's amazing how easy it is to get the data into the cloud. It's so easy. But it's not just how easy it's to get it into the cloud. It's to be confident that now that it's up in the cloud, I can run my they're running their business. It's not just something.
You're not just storing
It's not
things,
storing
you're
a bunch of
using-
photos. Not that they're not important,
Yeah.
but you know what I'm saying. Like you're literally running massive organizations, and you have to make sure that that's going to work.
Well, you're holding massive amounts of data, our personal data out there. You
Yeah,
have to
exactly.
understand it.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Brandon, tell us more about our security data lake offering at Archetype. We've had a lot of interest in this. Talk with a lot of CISOs, and it's really been energizing, to be honest with you, with our team.
Yeah, it has. Again, the opportunity is clearly there, and the tools are there, and now it's a matter of just putting the frameworks in place and leveraging them. So, we'll work with our clients to understand where their data is. What do you have? What are you in the cloud? What's on-prem? What are the things that we clearly need to prioritize? Come up with that data collection strategy, Jack mentioned that there are tools that sit on top of Snowflake that help not only with detection, but potentially even ingesting the security data into Snowflake, right?
Yep.
So what's the right tool set? What do they already have? If they already have SIMs, do we, how do we decide what goes into the SIM, what goes into Snowflake, or, both, right? And work through that strategy. And then it's just a matter of, we have the data in Snowflake. Clearly, we have to have the right security around that. These are potentially really sensitive things, so we got to have the right policies in place and so on to make sure that data is secure. And then we iterate on models, around what makes sense for integrating data. What can we use to enrich that, like we mentioned before, right? So we can tell stories about what's happening that give context to events that you see. And then, again, it's what are the priorities? Do we need to provide key risk indicators for dashboards, right? Are there stakeholders that need to see that stuff on a regular basis? Or is it really a self-service, opportunity where I need to aid the research process, which I think really could be one of the most valuable things that we do with a security data lake. And then again, machine learning, that may actually be the priority in some cases too. Like just come in, collect the data in one place, and let's build some machine learning models. That may drive the whole initiative.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know in the public sector, all of these security data lakes, these are really important. Everybody's trying to migrate to it. And the most powerful tools that we've seen out there is Snowflake and Alation doing this type of work. So it's excellent. Yeah. Guys, let's give the why Snowflake for cybersecurity workloads.
Yeah. So why Snowflake? Because in today's industry, so many different providers out there are pitching out their tools for cybersecurity, right? So I have customers coming to me that have maybe 10 to 15 different cybersecurity tools, and they have all these different data sources, right? It's a lot of work to connect all these tools to different data sources. So why Snowflake? Essentially to have that one hot tier storage layer to connect to all of your different cybersecurity tools, right? Some people out there are talking about consolidating cybersecurity tools into potentially one provider, but with the way threats are out there, you probably would not want to do that, right? Because each tool serves a certain purpose, right? So you want to keep that stack of cybersecurity tools. But at the same time, you want to solve the problem of connecting to all these data sources. So that single security data lake is the reason why Snowflake.
Excellent. Gene, how about Alation?
Yeah, sure. Alation and data security. Why would you want to do that? I would have to say that it really comes down to knowing what you have. How are you going to understand what to secure? Data discovery. It's always going to kind of come back to that for us. We connect to various data sources, lots of data sources. We actually are a great tool to help migrate data sources over to Snowflake. And the most important part that we feel is the data discovery to understand what does my organization have? What kind of data do we even have? Where is it all coming from? Let's start with a foundation to build on top of so we know what to secure, what's important. And Alation just really does that better than anybody, and giving you the ability to not only find the data, but then to continue to monitor it and let the business user actually be part of this. We actually call it active governance, where the business user can actually flag things and say, hey, this is important. Did we lock this down? Did we migrate this over? It's in another database. We want to move over to Snowflake. How do we know? And if we do want to bring it over, what security models have to be applied? So Alation's kind of like that manual on how to use your data. Yeah. It's really one of our claims to fame.
Well, that's an excellent and very important piece of all of this as well. Brandon, how about why Archetype?
Sure. Yeah, Archetype, of course, we're partners with Snowflake. We're experts in Snowflake, the Snowflake ecosystem. We're partners with Alation. Right. So we can bring those tools to bear. We know what it takes to actually build a security data lake. And then we also have expertise in cloud infrastructure, observability. We've been doing that for clients already. So we understand what, VPC flow logs look like and, that ecosystem of data that's out there. So we can handle, the types of data that are out there, the things that are sending event data. We've been building solutions in Snowflake for a long time, so we understand how to do that and how to bring it together. We understand compliance issues and regulations from dealing with our public sector clients, right? So we have all that experience that we can bring together and help a client move into this world where they can bring the data together. They can search their data that's available, and they can make sense out of it.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining back on Archetypical, and really enjoyed the panel discussion, gentlemen. So thank you for the Q&A here, and I know I learned a bit from it as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It was great.
Thank you.